Good Friday to everybody that's joining us live. If you're watching us on replay, welcome to you as well. This is DevOps Paradox Live. My name is Darren. I really know who I am this week. This over here is Victor. We're the co-host of a podcast called DevOps Paradox. And every Friday we get together. Today is much earlier than normal. I have a client call from 9:30 until 6 p.m. Eastern today, so that's the reason why we're not doing it during my lunch hour. But hey, details, got to pay the bills. This is usually where we talk about things that we saw in the past week and whatever's going on. So today is the September 11th edition of DevOps Paradox Live. Victor, how was your week?
My week is excellent, given that it's finishing.
Yes.
Almost done. That's the best part about my week.
Again, normally when we have that part of the conversation, your week is over. So I've caught you on your lunch hour, which is a little strange. So today we've got some breaking news that actually broke last week. So it's not really breaking news. But before we get to the news, do you have a drink? Or is it too early for you to even open a drink yet?
You have too soda? Early to have anything but soda, yes.
Well, again, and I've got my water because I went out in the dark and got my part of my walk in. So I haven't even had time to make my tea yet this morning. So this week on the episode, we had Gigi Saifon on. He was the author of Mastering Kubernetes, the 3rd edition. Gigi, if you're watching this, 3 editions. You really like the pain of that, don't you?
Hey, he chose to write about Kubernetes.
He did.
That means that there will be, actually, why is it only 3 editions? It should be, what, like 19?
Yeah, sure, why not? So if you haven't listened to that episode yet, go listen to it. It was Gigi's very first podcast episode. I thought he did great. He didn't even tell us that until afterwards, which was very, very interesting. So go take a listen to it. Let's get into the news if I can find my screens. Okay, where are we at? Application window. First bit up. Codespaces is becoming Codespaces. What? This actually came out after we did our show last Friday, so this is the reason why we sort of talked. Because we talked about Codespaces, probably a month ago? 3 to 4 weeks, somewhere in that ballpark.
Something like that, yeah.
And we were thinking, man, this is great. It's finally getting there, and now in the typical Microsoft fashion, they're killing it off already. But not really.
Actually, Visual Studio Codespaces was not even GA, kind of. It was in public beta or something like that. But it makes sense.
Yeah.
I think I understand what they're doing. And what they're doing is that they're consolidating everything into Azure or GitHub, which is a good thing. I mean, a good thing, because the bad thing would be to go back to the practices from many years ago when they would consolidate everything in Azure. Kind of, if you're not an Azure user, you cannot do this, you cannot do that, right? And I think that they're building those kind of 2 big groups of things. One is for Azure users, and the other one is for the rest of the world. And that is being consolidated into GitHub, and it makes sense.
And this is a collaboration tool around files that you have in a Git repository. It makes more sense for it to be inside a GitHub, period.
Exactly.
Now, the downside of it being in GitHub is if you're not a GitHub user, right? If you're a Bitbucket, a GitLab, a fill in the blank, then you're not going to get that. I wonder how that would work, even if it even work.
Yeah, it would be kind of. I mean, I understand they might lose some users, but
not enough.
I think that this is aimed more on public projects and things like that, and that's where GitHub rules, right? How many public, let's say, open source projects are in GitLab? Close to 0, right?
A small number, yes. Because after the wailing and gnashing of teeth that Microsoft was going to kill GitHub, we can see that really didn't happen.
It's very hard for Microsoft to get away from infame that they were in before,
Yeah.
right? But they're doing the right things. I really cannot complain. I don't think I cannot complain about Microsoft anymore. That almost bugs me, right? Kind of, oh, they were such a good company to complain about.
Yeah. Darn it, they actually got good leadership in place now, or at least reasonable leadership. So, if you haven't signed up for the public preview yet, you should probably go ahead and go do that. I will be doing that afterwards today.
Don't sign. No. Because the less people sign up for public preview, then more chances I get to be accepted to get in.
Okay. Right, there you go. But anyway, at the end of all this, in February of next year, everything dies inside of Azure. So, and not only is it retired, they're very explicit here. Codespaces remaining in the service will be deleted. They're pulling a Google here. They're completely killing it. So
yeah, but those things are not supposed to be there forever. They're very ephemeral, right? So, hey, that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. Next up, I saw this at some point this week. It's an offering called Krossboard, and it's tracking the usage of your clusters wherever your clusters may be. Now, apparently they're only working with GKE, AKS, and EKS. But it's a collection system, and that way you can determine what's the key features right here. I could care less about the deployment of it. Tracking usage and anticipate costs. That's the problem with Kubernetes. It's the wonderful thing about Kubernetes and the horrible thing. If you've done the right thing and turned on cluster autoscaling, great. But how do you know cluster autoscaling is working the way you need it to work? You should always is the argument even for cluster autoscaling that you should even have excess capacity available at all times?
Yeah, depends how you configure it and how it works and all those things. But cluster autoscaler is definitely not a solved problem. It's not a finished story. My main complaint I have about this is that if I would be a company interested in something like this, I think that I would rather look into a tool that tracks usage and cost of cloud provider as a whole, right?
Right.
Because kind of Kubernetes is only part of a story for people using AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud.
Yeah, this looks interesting. I haven't dug into it yet, but it appears to be a pay-only product, if I got it right. So I'll leave that up to you, whether or not you want to take any more time to look at it. Now, this next item is what Victor and I believe to be probably the biggest announcement of the week. And I'll pull it up here, is that the Google Cloud API Gateway went beta. It's been in alpha for a while. In fact, it went alpha way back when. There was an update in July, but then it finally went beta this week. And you're thinking, well, so what? But they answer the question in one of their early paragraphs here. Helping developers focus on building code without having to worry about the underlying infrastructure. Everybody's serverless today. Now, it's built on Envoy. We know you love Envoy.
It's not only love, it's kind of everything is Envoy.
Exactly.
Envoy is cool to begin with, but that's one of the things, one of the points that I use to eliminate things. Today, if it's something networking related and there is no Envoy, I'm very skeptical about it.
Right, because it has pretty much won that part of the battle.
Yes. That's probably the only thing that in networking space that is certain today, Envoy. Everything else.
Yeah. So here's a couple of pictures to where you could have a single interface for multiple services. You can do securing, all the different things. So it is beta. This is actually potentially on my list of things to work with this weekend because I'm building a small app for my daughter, and I'm figuring, okay, I'm going to probably use Cloud Run to do what I want to do with it, just because. The one thing that bugs me, because I tried something the other night with Cloud Run, I was trying to connect to Cloud SQL, and right now, and I'm trying to stay on the completely GA side of things, so I'm not using the private IP stuff, which requires the VPC and all the other things. Trying to connect to Cloud SQL only connects over a Unix socket. With the public IP space, you can't actually connect like you would typically connect to a database using, here's my host, here's my username, here's my password, blah, blah, blah. Nope, can't do that. The only way you can do that is through a private IP connection, which I would want a private IP connection anyway, right? But
yeah,
only having Unix socket, which I understand the reason why, but it's like, this is just different. But at least it stays inside, doesn't go outside, all the things. So
exactly.
It was just a little confusing when I was trying to figure it out. So, but anyway, that's not what we're talking about. API gateway.
It's a missing piece, basically. Really, this is what was. I mean, there are many things missing in Cloud Run, right? It's still very early, but this is the main missing piece. This is without this, you cannot really have complex system based on Cloud Run. You can have individual applications like what you're building for your daughter, or what we would put DevOps Paradox on website, what's not. But complex systems without this are really difficult, and so good change.
Just waiting for GA, please. Google anytime, please.
Hey. Gmail was in beta, I think, for like 10 years or something like that.
Okay. Yes, it was. This next one I saw blow up Twitter yesterday or day before yesterday. Somebody's creating a puzzle of the CNCF landscape. And he was just trying to get, hey, if I can get 15 or 20, pre-orders, I'll go ahead and think about doing it. Because it says it's handmade. I don't know what that means. He's probably printing it out and then doing a laser cut on it, is my guess.
Yeah.
This would be miserable.
It would be so horrifying. I would be miserable if I would get that puzzle and have to collect it. But it kind of... I like it because it shows the complexity of the CNCF ecosystem and how ridiculous almost it became, right? Yeah. I was looking to be honest, initially I was looking to CNCF like, hey, this is a good thing. They're actually putting order into the chaos that is around cloud native Kubernetes ecosystem, right?
Right.
And now they became chaos themselves.
Yeah.
Which, you know why?
Why?
Money. Which is normal, right? It's business. CNCF is business like anything else. So the more they have, the more income they get.
The bigger this puzzle piece will get.
Yes. No, the smaller the print will be.
The smaller the print will be, yes. Sorry, I should have said that. Yeah, it's already small. I don't know what size he was planning on doing this at. Let's see. Does he have...
Hey, whatever the size is, those boxes will be minuscule.
I know. I'm not a big puzzle person. I have a friend that loves doing puzzles. I might just buy it and send it to her and let her solve it.
My main problem with the puzzle is that I don't like them, but my family does, which is good because they do puzzle. The problem is that then they want to hang it on a wall, and that's where I freak out.
No.
No.
Okay. So anyway, if you want to order a CNCF landscape puzzle, it's on Etsy. The link will be down in the description below. Now, if you're watching this later, it may or may not be available, but just you can go check it out. All right, next up. I was scratching my head about this one, but I wanted to go ahead and add it anyway. Kotary. I'm assuming I'm saying that right. It's Kubernetes quota with confidence. And saying, why not use an admission controller? Right, so let's get down to the what is it. It's an operator that brings verification and policies to the resource quotas mechanism. Is this solving a problem that doesn't exist?
I think it does. I think it's even introducing some bad ideas or bad practices. Because, if I'm going to set my quotas so that the capacity of my cluster can fulfill those quotas, I think that I'm on a completely wrong path. Because realistically, the whole idea of quotas is not, okay, I have 100 gigs of RAM, I have 10 namespaces, let me give each namespace a quota of 10 gigs. That's wrong. That would be the same thing as if Google would have server capacity to fulfill all the quotas of their Gmail users, which they don't, because they would go bankrupt.
Right.
You need to assume that actually most will never reach the quota. Right? That's your limit. That's not your actual usage. That's just quotas are there to prevent people from going over the head, right? They're not representation of what they're really using. So the way to go forward is not, I don't believe is to do something like this. It is rather to, hey, you need to monitor your actual memory CPU usage and act. Whether that's scaling a cluster. I mean, I can imagine in cloud, that would be, you scale the cluster. So why this becomes almost ridiculous. Now, if you're talking about on-prem, then yes, but still you need to monitor. You cannot divide your cluster into namespaces and, divide it by 10, and that's how much each has. No.
Okay. Yeah, I was going through this and I was just going, it feels not full anti-pattern, but a little bit. And that's my concern. It may be fine. If you're still stuck in this thought process for mentality, I mean, if you're still stuck in the data center thought process for scaling, this is probably going to help. But
that was my first thought, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is for companies that are trying to replicate their pre-Kubernetes logic into Kubernetes.
Yeah.
But then I'm thinking, hey, they're most likely going to give everyone a separate cluster precisely because they're following that pattern, right? I don't see it likely that those types of companies with that logic would have one huge cluster separated into many namespaces given to different teams.
Well, okay, so let's, like this optional one, this is like the required one is like whatever, or the verification, but this one is a namespace cannot claim more than a third of the cluster. Can't you do that today already?
I mean, quotas are set, to begin with, quotas are set by, usually in scenarios like this, not in all scenarios, but in scenarios of companies that I can imagine this finding useful, they're set by dedicated teams, those sysadmins, operators, DevOps engineers, whatever you call them today, right?
Yeah.
And they know what's the capacity of the cluster. They know what how much quota they're willing to share to a team, right?
Right.
And again, I'm not sure that that's that useful. So it's kind of, hey, I don't know how big is my cluster, and it cannot expand. So it's a static cluster. I don't know how big it is, but this is very useful because it will tell me that it cannot go over 1/3.
Yeah.
Now, this is one of those things, if this would be a feature of Kubernetes, let's say, or if this would be a feature of, I don't know, the distribution you're using, whichever you're using, OpenShift, then you say, hey, it's there, kind of like, why not use it? If you find it useful, use it, but I'm not going to keep adding stuff for no good reason to an existing distribution. And that's, if this would be part of distributions, then yeah, why not?
Yeah. Okay. Next thing up is hopefully something we would never have to say again, but com to kube. It converts Docker Compose files into Kubernetes objects.
Yeah.
And it's an online service. Again, why?
I think that those things are they could be useful, let's say, but I think that they are very dangerous, because if you do convert it and just say, now I run this in Kubernetes, I tried a couple of files. I mean, the output is horrifyingly bad. And not because they did a bad job, but simply because, hey, it's apples and oranges.
Yeah.
So I'm really afraid that people will use that and just kind of, okay, now that's what it is. I'm going to run it in Kubernetes. As a starting point, maybe.
Yeah. It's my concern for the team that worked on this is people are going to use your reaction. This is horrible. You guys need to fix this. But yet it was a free service. Anytime you build a SaaS, you're going to have people complain, especially if it's free.
But it's, I don't know, like, why would you, I start to question motives, kind of like, or judgment in those cases. Why would you put your effort to create a service? So this is, if it's open source project, okay, but service for something that is so temporary, the number of people having Docker Compose is shrinking, right? So you created a real service for something that cannot exist for long. Hopefully it cannot exist for long.
Yeah, it is a project, and you can start it and run it locally. This is like maybe it was just a weekend project that maybe went sideways.
Yeah,
especially looking at the roadmap. But
I guess Gabriel and Claire had fun doing it, and that's the thing. Why not?
Just like how we're doing this, we're having fun.
Exactly.
Why not? So give it a shot if you're trying to get from Docker Compose to Kubernetes. I can't believe I said that out loud. That means you're going from Swarm to Kubernetes. I haven't seen the patches recently for the new Docker Edge stuff for the Docker Compose. Did anything change in the release that came out this week? Did you look?
I'm not following it closely, to be honest. Okay. I can only suspect that they rushed into pre-KubeCon announcements, and now it goes back to the normal rhythm.
Yeah, which we were talking about before we started the stream today. Is this week was pretty light on news because KubeCon is over. So
yeah, it makes sense because another KubeCon is coming, and you will see a month before KubeCon and until the next KubeCon, which is in US, again, things heating up.
Yeah. Speaking of KubeCon, all the videos in the playlist have been posted. So if you didn't get a chance to go and see them all, now you can go see them in a nice little playlist. The link for the playlist will be down in the notes today, wherever you're watching. It's very interesting, though. It looks very sanitized.
Yeah. I mean, what is curious to me is, excluding keynotes, there is a relatively low number of views, especially given that it's free. If you go to any of those, you will see, choose a random one, not that one, right? That's a keynote announcement. But if you go to any of them, I think that you will see that there is maybe 100, 200, 215, right? Now, that's a decent number if you would be talking about somebody's personal video.
Yeah.
But KubeCon, very low number.
Yeah. KubeADM deep dive. That scares me.
I want that thing to disappear. I mean, to keep being reserved for vendors who create platforms and not for end users.
Here's a Prometheus deep dive. That'll be interesting to see. But anyway, there's 100. Well, actually, it goes beyond 100. So there's. Let's see how far the list goes. Whoa.
314.
Oh, you've already. Oh, because it says 314 right here.
Yeah, that's also what gives you the numbers. So we have 314 videos, 9,000 views, 9,000 divided by 300. That's
30
views on average. I'm not complaining, just to clarify. I just think that people's relation to online conferences is changing.
Now, why do you think people's why do you think that why do you think the conference things are changing? Why do you think, are they
Because
just getting burned out, or what is it?
people were going to conferences before for reasons beyond the obvious ones. No, I mean, obvious one is to learn something, to see something cool and what's not. But it was also day off from work. It was a way to gather with friends. It was a way to network. It was a way to get drunk, and so on and so forth, right? Now, all those reasons are removed, and now you're just the learning part. And I think that, at least I personally don't see a strong reason to treat conferences as if they're TV shows. Oh, it started on this day at this hour. I need to drop what I'm doing. So I think that things are going into offline mode. Not offline, online, but not live mode.
Right, on demand.
Yeah, on demand. It's just, I mean, this is on demand. You can watch it whenever, right?
Right.
But the buzz is around watching it live, and at least I don't have time for that. I want to do it at my own pace and my own time. Unless if it's a physical conference, then I fly there. They're kind of like, there is nothing else for me to do but to be in a conference when I go there.
Right. When you could fly.
Yeah.
So Neil has a question. Let's go ahead and tackle this one real quick. Do you have any recommendations for deploying an on-prem K8s cluster? Is KubeADM the best option?
I think it's the worst option.
Yeah. What do you think is the best option right now?
I like Rancher the most.
That's what I was thinking. Number two, what do you think number 2 is?
I don't know whether there is number 2. I think it's either Rancher or OpenShift.
That was going to be my number 2, was OpenShift.
I'm not fond of OpenShift, but that's kind of, it's about finding a balance between what you need, but also what is serious, right? So kind of, I see only those 2 being really used in on-prem. And that makes me almost kind of critical. Hey, do I want really to use a distribution made by somebody used by nobody else?
Right.
So Rancher definitely, OpenShift second.
Yeah, because KubeADM tells me you're taking straight from upstream, and that scares me.
But it's kind of, if you take Rancher, so there are many brilliant people who really, really know what they're doing, making that thing for you, right? So kind of they're working day and night, many of them, to make the right choices for you and to simplify the process and what's not. Why not use that?
Yeah.
Right? Kind of, to me, it's almost, no, I know better than them. And you might. So, hey, please do. Please use KubeADM. But only and exclusively if you have needs that cannot be covered with Rancher or any other distribution. Only then it makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Last item, at least that we have scheduled to show, is this one. It was an article that I saw in Medium to where somebody took the Google SRE workbook and implemented it with Prometheus only. It's a very interesting article. Just because we've been talking about metrics over the past few weeks, or it feels like we have, and this just seemed like it aligned with what they were, what we've been talking about and what they were implementing just with Prometheus. I don't know.
I mean, it's not really just Prometheus.
Yeah.
Sounds like demeaning in a way. It's Prometheus. Kind of Prometheus is good, and Prometheus does really what you need from that type of a tool. Stores metrics. It allows you to query and creates alerts.
Yeah. I'm trying to see what their final picture is now. Yeah. Then they're doing this other variant. So, that was the initial, and I think they have the final picture down here too. Where was it? Yeah, whatever it is. Again, they were just trying to. My concern with people that take a book and try to implement all the things. So you remember the Gang of Four book, right? The patterns
Yeah.
book.
Oh, that
And
was a horrible one. I mean, good ideas, but I
Yeah.
really had difficulty reading it. It was
It wa-
so uneventful.
it was, but back in the day when it was super super hot, people was like, "Oh yeah, we've implemented all the patterns from the Gang of Four book." I go, "Why?" Like it was a bar to attain. And my concern with doing anything to the full out of a book is like, you don't not you're not going to implement everything. Pick the things that matter and do that.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
and looking at this, it doesn't look like they've gone overboard, which is good. But it's like that's
at
my
least the
concern.
things that were mentioned in that article make perfect sense to me.
Yeah.
Now, like Gang of Four or any other similar book, I do think it's very valuable to go through all the patterns or practices or examples or whatever it is, but not as a way I need to implement them all. It's more like, hey, now I have a picture in my head. Now I can choose, and now I can expand.
Right. It gives you options.
Exactly. It gives you knowledge to make educated decisions.
Right. When you didn't have the education before.
Yeah. I mean, when you are not... So there is always that tiny group of people who are creating new boundaries, like Gang of Four in a way, right? And most of us are following it. And if you're not in that small group that is creating something truly new and exceptional, then hey, somebody walked the path before me. Why not take the same path? And then when I get to the same destination as they are, then I figure out what makes a good use case.
Yeah.
Or what fits my organization.
Yeah. But the thing that, you do it, if you do it without the Gang of Four path, then you're wandering through the desert for 40 years instead of being there in 4 hours.
Exactly. That's why it is important to, again, take the same path like others, but not so that you can copy them, but so that you can make educated decisions what to do next.
Because if you believe that you're not going to be held responsible for the things you don't know, you haven't been living very long. Because you will be held responsible for things you don't know. Go run a traffic light and say, I didn't know I couldn't run a traffic light. You'll
but companies are very often closed ecosystems that simply, hey, this is how it is. Kind of, people learn to live with things that are considered bad in other places.
That's a horrible way to live.
No, not necessarily. Kind of ignorance might be one of the great ways to accomplish happiness.
Ignorance is bliss?
Yeah.
I choose to not believe that.
Yeah, because most likely you cannot be ignorant, but if you take people who are not, I mean, let's say that if you're a tribe ignorant of the existence of modern technology, then does that make them unhappy?
Well, so ignorance to me is something that is done on purpose.
Yes, but not if it's a closed ecosystem.
If it's a closed ecosystem, yeah, then it's not ignorance. It's something, whatever the right word would be for that.
I mean, you're still unaware.
Yeah,
so let's say
unaware.
Not ignorance,
yes.
Unaware, yeah.
And that's completely fine, right?
It's still not fine, but acceptable, understandable.
It's understandable. But yeah. The problem is you don't live, you may work in a closed ecosystem, but you don't live in a closed ecosystem.
Yes. And your next job when you get fired will not be in the closed ecosystem. Or you will not be able to give closed ecosystem as excuse.
Yeah. And that was a very broad statement. There are probably some governmental places where you could live that everything is closed. I won't say any names.
Then you can have a job for life. That's great.
Oh, job for life. What does that even mean?
It means you have a job until you retire.
What is retire? When they bury you, is that the retirement?
When you get money for not working.
Yeah. Okay, so that's all the news for the week. You and Carlos did a session yesterday, or a pre-recorded session, and then a live Q&A. What was it about? It was about the progressive delivery?
Progressive delivery, yes.
Okay. So it's sort of
I could actually 2 sessions this week. That one and some panel. Panel was more fun, to be honest, because...
And it was live, right? The panel was not recorded?
Live, yes.
Okay.
Live. I mean, how do you record a panel? Yeah. I mean, actually, they wanted to record, but that's just silly. But yes, live.
Yeah. Neil had another question here. What are our thoughts on Mirantis and Docker Enterprise? Why?
Docker Enterprise is dead. There is no such thing. I mean, it's not dead. It's on life support, right? Okay. And Mirantis just gave ridiculous small amount of money to Docker to buy their IP, and they're just gonna milk it for a while as long as it lasts, and that's about it.
Yeah. There's no way I would install Docker Enterprise in a place today. No way.
I mean, I understand it could be a difficult decision what to do if you already have it, whether to sunset it yesterday or today or tomorrow. But no.
I can't even think of a good reason why I would do it.
I'm happy that Mirantis bought Docker IP, Enterprise IP, because finally it is official what was known but not official for a while now, and that is that technology is dead. If it isn't, Docker wouldn't sell it.
Right. Well, if you think about it too, the Red Hat distributions are all based on Cryo or Podman, right? I'm saying Cryo, but they're not using Docker directly, right? So it's
for building images, you mean? For Container Engine.
Yeah, for Container Engine.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one there is.
Yeah, but it's not Docker. Right.
Yeah, and that's how irrelevant it became. I don't know anymore because it's irrelevant. It's an implementation detail nobody cares about anymore.
It's just Kubernetes. If I can give it an image and it runs, I don't care what it's doing under the hood.
And on top of that part is still in hands of Docker company, right?
Yeah.
Mirantis bought the enterprise part, Docker Enterprise, something, whatever it's called.
Yeah. I'm glad somebody bought it, but I don't know. Unless their plan is to play out like the old SCO Unix days to where they're just going to use it as a legal way to make money. It's the only thing I can think.
It's like buying mainframe, right? There is business to be still... There are cows to be milked.
Yeah. And hopefully they're not going down the SCO route, but something tells me it might go that way. You remember that, right? You're old enough for that.
Yeah.
It's like, we bought all the IP. Now nobody can use... It's sort of like the GIF, lawsuits. We own the rights to the GIF. You can't create GIFs.
Yeah, they bought the rights to something that was closed source anyway, and enterprise anyway, so
it's fine.
And how many people have Docker Enterprise? Let's face it. It's a small business.
I would say it's small. What else is going on? I think, I got through all the news. We got through all of our questions so far. What's your plan for this week? Where are you going to be at this week or this next week?
I'm gonna if it means talking, then I have no idea. I need to check my calendar somewhere.
Calendars. Okay.
Physically home, everybody's home.
Everybody's still home, yes.
And professionally, I think that the rest of this year I will be mostly focus on GitOps. That's kind of my next obsession.
As if it hasn't been your obsession.
It's
going to be a stronger
in a way,
obsession.
But it was more kind of, I think that I was more obsessed on on principles, yes,
yeah,
and how to get to those principles through existing tools. Now I'm trying to explore the tools that were kind of designed from ground up under that umbrella, right?
Yeah. Let me pull up Neil's latest comment here, and then we'll... It's getting pushed from management towards Docker Enterprise. It feels like your management is reading blog posts from 3 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, look, Docker Enterprise is dead, and I mean,
Swarm is dead.
Yeah. Look at the comments. Look at the pull requests. Kind of like look at the releases. There, it's gone. It's finished. And if underlying technology is finished, then you're really going to pay somebody money because Docker Enterprise is not free, right? So you're gonna pay somebody money, to get enterprise version of something that is dead.
It's a bad.
Tell your management that they're all necrophiles.
Wow, okay. That is worthy of that. Okay.
Wrong side.
Well, no, I know it was me. I can't control your video, but yeah, that's a bad idea. Now, Andre said, it's working great for him. I know of a number of clients that are using Rancher and they've been happy with it. It's
amazing.
Yeah. I would. Now, the only other one, I'm trying to remember.
But if you go back to Neil's comment, I think that the main problem with all that is the sentence, because we are on premise and it supports Swarm. Kind of, if your management wants to invest in Swarm, Neil, go change the company.
Thank you for saying it. I was going to say it, but you took care of it.
Change the company. Run while you can.
Yeah. It's do not use Swarm. Don't do it. It's dead. Has been dead. People will tell me different. There are still SaaSes that run Swarm for you. Don't use them. Run away.
I mean, it's okay to keep it with the same logic like mainframe, right? You have something running in Swarm. It's doing whatever it's doing. You're not willing to make the investment to move all that to Kubernetes. I can understand that.
Yeah.
I'm just judging that. Do you really want to invest in that?
Yeah.
To keep it, hey.
Let me use a part of day job type thing. Just because inside of Jenkins you can create freestyle jobs does not mean that you should.
Exactly.
Anything new, if you're writing a new job in Jenkins, you should be using pipeline. Period.
Exactly. I would be very judgmental if I hear I just created a freestyle job today. That would be very bad. Yeah. I have thousands of freestyle jobs and they're doing whatever they're doing. That's fine.
Yeah, that's completely fine. If you wanted to move them over time, that's okay. If you didn't want to move them over time, that's okay. Just don't create new. If you start creating new Swarm applications based on and only can run on Swarm, you are building on a dead technology.
I would just rephrase don't create dead. New, but rather don't invest.
Don't invest.
An investment can be creation. It could be buying additional license. It could be a few additional things. Don't invest in that.
Yeah, don't invest. Time, money, resources, nothing. Just let it be. And if it starts breaking, then that's your flag for moving to something else.
But exactly, that's kind of, that was one of my strategies when people ask me, what do I do with freestyle jobs? It's okay if you leave them. And then if you have thousands and one of them needs to be changed, improved, something is broken, then you take that one and rewrite to pipelines, right? So the moment comes to invest, that's the moment you might want to. If you're not proactive, you might do it proactively, but if you're not proactive, say, I need to invest a minute there, That's a moment to rewrite.
Yep.
I interrupted. You were saying something.
It wasn't that. It was just I just got really sad that we're still having this swarm and freestyle conversation in 2020.
That's why I said that I'm happy that Mirantis bought it, because that made the situation that was clear to many but not to all, hopefully clear to all, or it should be clear to all, right? Kind of, because before Docker was misleading people. I think that Docker knew that Swarm is dead for a while, right? And you can see that indirectly through the moves they made towards Kubernetes and what's not, right? But they publicly they did not say that. They did not say Swarm is dead. So I can understand how some people might have been misled. But now, hey, I sold this thing. It's not worth more than the money they gave me, which is not much. Now nobody can say that they're misled.
Yeah. If Docker Desktop is shipping Kubernetes inside of itself,
yes,
just don't ignore that Swarm even existed. Okay, at least from an investment standpoint. I'll use your word again. Okay. Anything else? We might just end this one up a little bit earlier today.
That's okay. We don't have a predefined duration.
No. An hour always feels good just because it makes us feel important. Why? I don't know.
Exactly. It's like...
just because we can.
It's like a duration of a school class plus the break.
Yeah. Breaks. Okay. For the people that I'm working with on this engagement, I apologize publicly. I don't take breaks. They're having to make me take breaks. Like, I'll go for 4 or 6 straight hours, not even stop. I was like, hey, can we take a break? Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, let's take a break. I don't know why.
That's good. You're forcing them to communicate with you.
Yeah, that is good. Well, so next week's podcast episode is about... Did I not write that down? I got to get these notes updated. Why am I having a hard time remembering to do that? It's because it's not part of my workflow. I don't have it written down in a checklist. I'm basically running my mouth while I'm pulling this up so I can remember what's coming out next week, because this next episode is just you and me. And we're talking about logging.
Okay.
And that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to say logging with what, but logging. We've talked about Prometheus from a metrics perspective, but logging, we got some help from our community on the logging stuff. So that comes out next Wednesday, 6 a.m. Eastern. We're recording actually a couple of episodes next week that are probably going to be pretty interesting and probably controversial. Not that we're ever controversial, right?
No, that's not us.
No. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for hanging out with us. If you're watching the replay, everything that we talked about today is down in the show notes below. And if there is no, I don't believe there is anything else. Nope. So check us out. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, go down to that corner right over there. Go click the subscribe button, ring that bell. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please go do that. In fact, that's the one thing I forgot to bring up today is if you don't know where our site is, it's DevOpsParadox.com. That's where everything can be found. If you haven't joined up the Slack group yet, link's also over there. And that's where you can talk to us. You want to email us, tell us that we're completely idiots. Usually if you're going to tell us that we're idiots, do it in Slack. It has a much bigger blast radius.
No. If you want to tell us that we are idiots, then send us an email without saying why you think we're idiots. You will be invited to a podcast.
It should be a podcast, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Have the courage to say it live.
Yeah. If you say it to our backs, we're okay with that. If you say it to our face, we've got much more respect. Okay. Let's call that good for today. Everybody have a great weekend. And we will talk to you next Friday at who knows what time. We'll figure that out based on my work schedule. So there we go. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you later.